Hey everyone, we're at Computex 2018 at Gigabyte's headquarters now, looking at a good amount of new products actually. One of them that I want to point out immediately is the new X399 motherboard for AMD, not Intel, and then a B450 motherboard for AMD, not Intel. If anyone else is getting those confused, we'll talk about other motherboards later, but for now, these two are new and interesting. And then also the Gigabyte's trying to make a push somewhat in memory, a couple of other adjacent spaces like power supplies. So we'll go through a few of these before the show starts, and then I think we'll have a couple more things to talk about later on. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly's high-end thermal paste and liquid metal. Thermal Grizzly's Cryonaut is an affordable, high-quality thermal compound that doesn't face some of the aging limitations of other pastes on the market. Cryonaut has a thermal conductivity of 12.5 watts per meter Kelvin, focuses on endurance, is easy to spread, and isn't electrically conductive, making it safe to use on GPU dies. Thermal Grizzly also makes Conductonaut liquid metal, which we've used to drop 20 degrees off some temperatures in our delidded tests. Buy a tube at the link in the description below. So let's start with the X399 motherboard. This is a pretty high-end board, and there's a reason for it, but basically X399 has been out for a while now. It's not inherently exciting. There is Threadripper 2 around the corner. We already know publicly August is roughly the release timing. AMD will almost certainly have announcements this week. There are rumors online about 24 cores. There are rumors about 32 as well, but I don't know what will happen with that. So either way, adding more cores is going to impact the power consumption. It is going to impact the VRM requirements. So it makes sense to have new X399 motherboards. This one has copper heat sinks on it actually for the VRM components. So that's a bit different. It's not entirely necessary to have copper. Typically, normally you don't get a huge difference thermally, or it's just irrelevant. This might be a little different just because, here's the thing, you look at this motherboard, every single square millimeter on this board is filled with something. So you start running out of room to just add more phases to spread the heat over a wider surface area. The only solution to that is more active or passive cooling, or a mixture of the two, because there's physically no more space for a bigger VRM. And so you're left with either really beefy power stages, and they already have some pretty high-end ones on here. So I think this board is running an IR 35201 PWM, which is pretty standard actually. They have a 35204 as well. Not familiar with that one yet, but we'll look into it. And then 3556 for the power stages, which are 50 amp power stages. There are 10 of them, and I think it's a 10+3 VRM design. But in addition to that, basically the solution here thermally is a bunch of fins, and they're copper and nickel plated, hence shiny. And then underneath here, there are going to be two fans, I think, eventually. So there should be two small fans under there to help with dissipation. And also back here, there's another small heat sink, and it's just an aluminum sink that's sticking up. It's pretty wide, more like macro fins than micro fins. And that is for a 10 gigabit Ethernet controller. And so that thing, I think, is pronounced a Quantia. Not positive on it, but it's a 10 gigabit Ethernet controller, and they have two additional Ethernet ports on here, 1 gigabit Ethernet. So there are three total. One's 10 gigabit, and it's controlled via standalone controller as opposed to just straight off the chipset or something like that. Kind of interesting, especially for production PCs like X399, because you're dealing with potentially environments like ours where we're moving gigantic files back and forth across a NAS internally or something along those lines. So that's the basics of the board. Still ECC, registered, memory, all that stuff. Not really changed from Threadripper 2 specs that we've talked about thus far in other videos on the channel. And I think everything else is more or less what you see is what you get. I guess I'll point out the PCIe assignment. So 16.8, 16.8 for that. And then the rest is you have some M.2 ports and things like that. A couple of smaller points here. There's a 6-pin for PCIe on this side. There is integrated I/O shield that we've talked about in the past. And then RGB LEDs pretty much everywhere, except they're more tasteful this time. They're digital RGB LEDs, and there are actually not any in the memory slots or the PCIe slots. The backplate has some interesting lighting to it as well, though, on this side. And then finally, this you may not have seen before. So on the EPS 12-volt connectors, those are plated with metal as well on the outside. Probably more of a looks thing than anything. It fits with the rest of the board, I suppose. Not going to get anything like structural rigidity or anything like that, but looks-wise, I guess that's what they're going for. So that's X399. I think that pretty much covers that board. We can talk about B450 now. This is an AMD product, and I'm going to take a very brief tangent here. and say if Intel and AMD, one of them could grow up and stop copying the other, that would be fantastic, because B450, B460, B360, B370, whatever, B350 rather, H370, Z370, Z390, Z490, all of these things that we've talked about in the past, getting really annoying to keep up with. So maybe some different names. B450 though, it's going to be AMD's. And this board is pretty straightforward. So for the VRM on this one, there's an Intersil ISL 95712 for the PWM. And for the drivers, it's ISL 6625A. We'll talk about this more with Buildoid later. SoC is running 1 high, 1 low, and DDR MOSFETs 1 high, 2 low for that. There's an integrated I/O shield on this one as well for a mainstream board that's a bit different and noteworthy. And this one's called the B450 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. Quick note here on these things, the naming is going to change for Gigabyte. So this board is called the Xtreme, and this one is not really anything related to the previous names. But 357 are the gaming brands that we've kind of come to know with Gigabyte, 7 being high-end, and 9 sometimes. So that's changing to Xtreme and some other things we'll talk about later. But basically 357 probably going away at least in the next round of motherboards, obviously not for the existing rounds. So that's noteworthy, but it's just a marketing rebranding thing more than anything. It's for memory for this show. So Gigabyte has RGB memory, not inherently exciting to do either of those two things. They are doing something a bit different though. First of all, guaranteed B die, which I guess is noteworthy. This is a 3200 megahertz kit, and one of these two sticks is fake. So what they are doing, and this is interesting given the current memory market, is supplying kits of 4-ish. It's really 2 plus 2. So there's 2 real sticks and then 2 fake ones. And the dummies are still, they look exactly like the real sticks, but internally you're not getting any actual memory dies on them. The point being that you can populate all 4 slots if you want to do that. If OCD is kicking in or something, you really want 4 slots populated, or you think it looks better with RGB LEDs, then you can do that with some fake sticks as well, and it shouldn't really impact price a whole lot. I guess the other side of things is that from Gigabyte's perspective, they can more or less guarantee that their memory is going to work with their motherboards. That's been a bit of a problem with actually Ryzen and Intel lately, so that's part of a marketing play as well. But for the memory, basically all you need to know is one of them is fake in this kit, which is actually kind of cool because memory is expensive enough where buying 4 sticks is difficult right now. So it's a bit different. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, I get it, but just to preempt the comments, you got to give someone credit for doing something different with memory other than putting Novec fluid in it, which is, I suppose, equally pointless from a performance standpoint, but at least this one doesn't look horrible. So, yeah, that's more or less Gigabyte's setup for Computex. They have a set of power supplies coming out as well. AP850GM is the one next to me right here. I think G stands for gold and M stands for modular. Don't know a whole lot about it. We'll find out more at a later date. But that's it for now. X399 Xtreme is the one to look out for. The B450 Pro Wi-Fi board is coming for mainstream AMD processors as well very soon. And as always, check the links in the description below for more information. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly with these videos. I'll see you all next time.